It doesn't matter if it's Mark Mangino or Turner Gill or Charlie Weiss coaching Kansas. Bob Stoops never loses to the Jayhawks, and most of the time when the Sooners play Kansas, it's a runaway game. Tonight was expected to be a runaway, and it certainly was. A lot of people were curious how Oklahoma would look the week after just humiliating the Texas Longhorns. Would the Sooners have an emotional letdown? Would they be thinking ahead to the mega showdown coming up on October 27th against the undefeated and highly ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish? Well, as far as Oklahoma being fully fired up for this game, I'm not sure, but were they fully focused in playing the Kansas Jayhawks? From all indications, I would say yes. This game between OU and Kansas on Saturday night started a little bit after 6 o'clock, but for all intents and purposes, the game was over at about 6:45. It was over pretty early as the Sooners win the game 52-7. The game wasn't even that close, as at one point, midway through the third quarter, it was 52-0. Kansas, they try, they do everything they can, but outmatched in every capacity at Gaylord Memorial Stadium in Norman on Saturday night. The Sooners offensively gave plenty of time for Landry Jones to throw the ball. Had all kinds of time to dissect the Kansas secondary. Lots of receivers tonight got involved for the Sooners. Kenny Stills, of course, scored Oklahoma's first touchdown. Pretty pass from Landry Jones to Kenny Stills from about 43 yards out, and it would be the first of many touchdowns for OU on Saturday. But it wasn't just Kenny Stills. We saw Justin Brown get into the scoring act, and also we saw other receivers for the Sooners. Sterling Shepard had a nice game as well for Oklahoma. Justin Brown, my goodness, we'll talk about him a little bit later as far as special teams go. And right now, you have to say Oklahoma playing fantastic football, much better than what we saw in September, especially after the Kansas State loss. The Sooners have responded the way that really good teams respond after having some early season hiccups. They've learned from them, and right now they've got a lot of momentum entering the Notre Dame showdown, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Of course, that big showdown with Notre Dame coming up in just a few days, the game that will be on national television. The Sooners proved tonight that you don't necessarily have to have a 100-yard rusher, which they didn't. In fact, they didn't even have a 50-yard rusher, but the ground game was effective. You don't have to have a 100-yard receiver. Sooners, of course, Kenny Stills came close. He had 90 yards, but still, Oklahoma was effective as far as receiving. A lot of receivers got into the act. And by the way, Jalen Saunders, the transfer, he got involved early and often for OU. And you don't necessarily have to have a 300-yard passer in order to have a great night as far as passing. Landry Jones, I think, had 290, but still, it was a wonderful night for the senior. Overall, the Sooners tonight did a little bit of everything, and I know Kansas stinks, okay? We knew that entering the game. They're a bad team. But take that out of the equation and just look at how Oklahoma played, and again, they did a little bit of everything right. Of course, we've broken down offensively how they did. Defensively, another masterful job by Mike Stoops. I thought the front four had one of their better nights of the season. We saw Chuka Ndale, how well he played from his defensive line spot. Also, Jamarcus McFarland, he was living in the Kansas backfield as well. R.J. Washington, he's having a real good year. Casey Walker, he got involved. Good night for Tom Ward. And I don't know how many tackles Tony Jefferson had in the first quarter for OU, but you kept seeing his jersey, number 1, involved in so many plays. It must have been at least a half dozen plays in that first quarter where he made tackles. He was everywhere. And Javon Harris with a couple of picks for the Sooners. So this was a game, again, the Sooners did a little bit of everything right, offensively, defensively, and the special teams. And for Bob Stoops, my goodness, it just seems like the week after Texas, whether it's a win, which it usually is when they play Texas, or a loss, the game after, the Sooners just look invincible. Now, since we no longer do the 4 keys to the game, we are going to give Oklahoma a letter grade offensively, defensively, special teams, and overall. And judging how they played tonight against Kansas, this is going to be the easiest report card that I'll ever have to issue grades on. Offensively, an A. Listen to this. First 6 possessions of the game. Field goal. Touchdown, 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 touchdown. In the second half, touchdown. And by the way, this does not even include the 2 special teams touchdowns that Oklahoma had in the middle. Punt return for TD, which we'll talk about in a little bit, as well as a kickoff return to begin the second half by Roy Finch, and what was his biggest play so far of this 2012 season. Offense scored early and definitely scored often. Most of those scores, touchdowns. Brilliant. Defensively, solid A in this department as well. Despite the fact that Oklahoma's defense was on the field for 19 minutes, and even though at times they had some issues in containing Kansas's ground attack with James Sims, who I thought had a good game in the losing cause night for the Jayhawks, Oklahoma's defense definitely made life havoc for whoever the quarterback was for Kansas, whether it was Michael Cummings or whether it was Dane Christ. Both had long nights for Rock Chalk Jayhawk. We mentioned the 2 interceptions that Javon Harris had tonight for the Sooners. And how about the brilliant play that Tom Wart made when the score was 10-0 Sooners? Kansas had just recovered a fumble off a punt return, and they had the ball at the Sooner 11-yard line. And then Wart forces the fumble, and the presence of mind that Casey Walker had to pick the ball up and take it to Kansas territory, spoiling Kansas's best opportunity at a score in the first half. Looked like Kansas was going to get at least 3 on that possession. They didn't get anything, so the Sooners make amends for that special teams hiccup. And speaking of the special teams, I am going to give Oklahoma an A in the special teams as well. Even though I know Brown had the fumble on the punt return early in the ball game, Kansas didn't score after that, couldn't take advantage, and then Brown made up for it big time with the 90-yard punt return for a touchdown. I don't know if you saw it. If you didn't, do yourself a favor and watch YouTube, pull it up, because you're going to see Justin Brown make several guys miss. He did get good blocking, granted for that, but also he made a ton of Jayhawk players miss him. And then he really turned on the afterburners, and then once he got inside the Jayhawk 10, he starts his jump from the 6-yard line and has enough stretching to get the ball into the end zone. I mean, that was one of the more impressive touchdowns I've seen at that stadium, probably, since 1983 when Spencer Tillman against Nebraska, leaped at least 5 yards to score a touchdown, and that was when Nebraska was the #1 team in the country. Well, this one was even more impressive because Brown started all the way back at his own 10-yard line. At this point he's got to be gassed, but still he has enough energy from his own 6-yard line to leap and then stretch the ball toward the pylon, and it's a touchdown. An incredible athletic effort by Justin Brown, and then also to the fact that Oklahoma special teams in the second half to start the second half with the Roy Finch kickoff return for a touchdown. It's been a long year for him because of the fact that he hasn't had terrific work ethic, and it's costed him valuable playing time in the backfield for OU, but he's still used on kickoff returns, and he took advantage of his fine speed and terrific blocking from the kick return team, and at that point it made it 45-0 Sooners. So Oklahoma takes care of business, as does Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish taken to the limit today by BYU, but the Irish survive. They win by 3 points. Notre Dame, got to give them credit, they find ways to win. And I tell you what, OU will be favored to beat Notre Dame on October 27th in Norman, but it won't be easy. It'll be easily the best front seven that this OU offense has faced all year long. But Notre Dame on offensively, other than the tight end, Tyler Eifert, not a whole lot impresses me about Notre Dame's passing attack. Good running game, but for the most part, passing game is limited. I think this matchup really favors OU, but again, it will not be easy. And if the Sooners do what they did, if they do against Notre Dame what they did against Kansas State, they're going to lose, and that is not taking care of the ball. Notre Dame, just like K-State, takes advantage of turnovers. So it will be a nationally televised game. I would be shocked if College Game Day from ESPN isn't in Norman, because I've looked at all the matchups for that particular week, and I can't find another one that's bigger than the Irish and the Sooners. And it's the first time since 1966 that Notre Dame has played in Norman against the Sooners. So it's a matchup about 46 years in the making, one of the biggest non-conference home games that OU has ever played. And that's saying a lot, considering the tradition of the program. Quickly highlighting other games today, Big 12, for the most part, teams did not know how to play defense. That was evident in the Baylor-Texas game. Texas gets a much-needed win after getting blown out by Oklahoma this past week. They win, but they give up 50 points in the process. They win 56-50, but if you're Texas, you'll take a win any way you can get it. Triple overtime thriller between Texas Tech and TCU, with the Red Raiders winning the game. I think Seth Day, he had 7 touchdowns in that game for the Red Raiders, so they'll remain in the top 20. But again, both teams had defensive issues there. And I'm telling you what right now, West Virginia, vastly overrated. My goodness, we thought this was going to be a team that could contend for the Big 12, but it was pretty simple. They weren't ready for that. Offense has slumped the past 2 weeks. But the defense, that might be one of the worst defenses I've ever seen in my entire life. They were at home tonight against Kansas State, and the Wildcats just absolutely dissect them. The Wildcats are for real, ladies and gentlemen, and they're going to have a legitimate shot at running the regular season table. They don't have too many hurdles left. And Colin Klein right now, I'm telling you what, nationally, he's going to be seen as maybe the #1 Heisman Trophy candidate. So you'll hear a lot more about Colin Klein. He's having one dream season for Bill Snyder and the Wildcats. And then Oklahoma State, they win against Iowa State. Iowa State's offense sputtered all over the field, and Oklahoma State with a good performance today by Walsh, the quarterback, and by Randall, the running back. So that breaks down the Big 12, and of course Florida, they remain impressive. They rout South Carolina, so give it up to the Gators. Will Muschamp has Florida playing on a very high level right now. So that does it for the post-game show. Again, Oklahoma winning 52-7. Again, we thought the game would be a laugher, and it was pretty early. I think I'm all laughed out. So, coming up, we will have our weekly matchup show. It should be on Tuesday, the 23rd. The Sooners and Notre Dame in a rare meeting between these two college football heavyweight powers, and it should be a lot of fun on Saturday, the 27th. We'll break the game down for you on Tuesday, the 23rd. Oklahoma 52, Kansas 7. Bob Stoops now a perfect 14-0 the week after the Texas game. Yep, some things never change. Boomer Sooner.